Alright, welcome back to another exciting Embrace Destiny video. Today's episode is part 1 of a new series in which my girlfriend plays through the game. So a little context here. Destiny is coming up into its 3rd year, having been released in the fall of 2014, and since that time we've seen many new expansions, new developments, changes, but also fixes and patches and things throughout the game. They even changed voice actors for Ghost, this little character you're seeing floating through here. Through the last year or so, my girlfriend has seen me play a lot of this game, whether it be strikes, crucible matches, story modes, or just hanging out with my friends. Through it all, she's been very supportive, and recently she expressed an interest to try it out herself. And I thought, well, why not go back to the beginning? Obviously, things are a little bit easier there for a first-time player. And I thought this would be a great opportunity to explore both the game and her experience of it as we go along. Just a little context for her: she is more comfortable with mouse keyboard control games you play on your computer. So the whole controller scheme is very different and new to her. But she showed great interest in trying it out, and we were both excited to see how it goes. Now, sadly, when I first started recording this video, the audio in the background of the game actually came through quite intermittently. So you're only going to hear my voice today. But I promise on later videos you'll be able to hear the background conversation and game footage. So what's going on here? Well, as I explained in a previous video, Destiny is set in a far future where humanity has pushed forward into the outer solar system at least, maybe even to the stars. But thanks to alien threats encroaching, we've actually been pushed all the way back to Earth and only have one major city left. When the game starts, Ghost here, voiced by Nolan North, originally voiced by Peter Dinklage, who plays Tyrion in Game of Thrones, but they changed him about halfway through. I'll talk more about that later. Your Ghost, who is a portion of the power of the Traveler, kind of humanity's protector, actually finds you and brings you back to life. And as you see now, basically says, we need to get out of here because alien threats are coming. So it's an interesting premise. I mean, you're learning everything new about the game for the first time, just like the player. And I mean, so many questions come up with Destiny, and unfortunately, Destiny is a game that loves to hide its answers behind the scenes and in between pieces of lore and history. But the game is the concepts are very exciting. It's part Western, it's part sci-fi shooter experience. It's got a lot going on for it. So my girlfriend here, she's just moved in from the wall, and she's starting to make her way inside, trying to hide from this new threat she's encountered called the Fallen. Now, the first thing I want to comment on is, as I may have said earlier in this video, my girlfriend is new to controller layout. So I've noticed something with people who are not familiar with controllers when they pick them up for the first time. The most common controller these days has a few buttons and at least 2 control sticks. I mean, if you're looking at the PlayStation, the Xbox, the Nintendo, they all have 2, they call them twin stick shooters, twin stick operators, where you have a left and right stick that you're moving around. But for some reason, this seems to be a difficult concept for people to grasp. And this is in no way, I'm going to be providing commentary on my girlfriend's gameplay, but I'm in no way critiquing her here. It's an interesting thing to me that people seem to have this trouble. I've noticed other people pick up a controller for the first time, and instead of moving gently and smoothly, circling around corners, they seem to move one stick at a time. So they walk straight. If they need to go left around a corner, they walk right into the wall, then they use the other finger to turn left, and then they walk straight again. It's just an interesting thing. But I'm sure as she and other people play through these kind of games a bit more, they'll have more experience with it. People like myself, my friends, we have the advantage of playing many of this generation's type of game, and a lot of games and companies, they borrow from each other. Right trigger is shoot, left trigger is aim, pushing on one of the sticks causes you to crouch, things like this. So we already skipped the first part of the actual game where you create a character. My girlfriend has decided to go with a... Did she go with human? No, she went with an Awoken, which is the race of people who are kind of half light, half darkness. And she went with Titan. Titan is my personal favorite class. I did my best to not bias her in any way, but I'm kind of glad she chose it because it's the one I'm most familiar with and I'm able to help her move through the game. Plus, the Titan is generally a little bit more survivable, and for a new player, it's I think it's a little bit better to have a class or a character that can take as many shots as he can before he dies. So she's getting used to the radar system here. You can see in the top left, your objective is the little white blinking arrow. Your health is represented by the white bar at the top. Nice. And getting used to where the enemies are in your radar is a very important, useful skill. And for someone like me, I've been playing this game so often for so long, it's second nature. But looking back at it now, I can see why it's a little bit difficult. You have to keep track of a lot of things at once. For someone who's new to the controller scheme, having to aim and fire and stop aiming, look at the radar, that's a bit complicated. But she's doing pretty well so far, I have to say. I've seen other people who just walk into a wall and they get tired and they give up, and I can understand that. So far, she's picked up the first weapon in the game, and she's trying to escape the fallen threats here. As we continue throughout this video series, I hope that I don't end up being too repetitive for you and that I have interesting things to say. As you can see here, she ran right by the first chest. Just right behind her, there's actually a chest that contains another item. I believe it's your second gun. Let's see. Yep. The video kind of cut out a little bit here, but the chest did indeed contain a shotgun. Interestingly enough, I actually ran by this chest the first time. I'm not sure what it is. If it, the green neon lights were not enough for people. I'm kind of curious if other people ran by it, but I know personally, as soon as I figured out how to run on that straight stretch, I just ran right by it. Here we are, I'm actually explaining some of the concepts. I told her of the control scheme earlier, but having to remind her which is, pressing this button will switch to this gun. Here we see some trip mines. I kind of like this feature in this game. I forgot that Destiny actually had a built-in tutorial. They teach you how to move, how to shoot, how to crouch. I'm used to a game nowadays that has a very a very blatant tutorial where the words will actually flash up on the screen. Press B to crouch, press A to jump. But this game tries to incorporate a more subtle approach where you actually need to learn how to use the controls as they come up in the game. And that's quite interesting. To be honest, I kind of expected her to walk into this trip mine. I believe I shot it out the first time I played, but as you can see here, she decides to move under it. I'm really surprised she didn't turn around and walk back into it right there. That's something I definitely have done early on in my gaming experience. It's also very interesting because at this point, the game of Destiny works like a lot of other games where your character can level up. It can improve in both armor and attack, but you also gain new abilities. The whole point of the game is that the Traveler, this, alien powerful presence, actually gives you some of its power through its ghost. So everything you can do becomes better. You can jump higher, you can punch harder, and as you saw in earlier videos, you can release a super where you launch a devastating attack of some kind against your enemies. But right now, it's just guns and fists. I said in an earlier video that punching enemies is really rewarding, but it's also a lot easier. Where there's a little bit of aim assist where if you are basically blind, as long as you hit the melee, the punch button, your character will move toward the closest enemy most of the time, as long as you're kind of facing near them. It's a very easy trap to fall into, but for the Titan, it's a good one to fall into because you gain abilities later that make it not only easier but more beneficial for punching enemies, and we'll explore that in later videos. So as you can see here, she's pretty surrounded, but the Titan is a pretty formidable class, shall we say? So it can take a lot of hits before it dies. I'm not actually sure. I bet that the Warlock and Hunter classes, the two other classes in this game, are just as tough in their own way. Perhaps they're faster. Perhaps they gain a faster health regen ability. I'm not an expert in the other classes. I know how they work, but I've only played each of them for maybe a couple of hours, whereas I played a Titan for probably a grand total of 15 straight days. Few hours here, a few hours there. But anyway, that's our first in a series of videos. We're going to make a few more as we explore this game together. I hope you enjoyed what you've seen, and I hope you come back for more. And until then, per audacia ad astra, my friends.